So hey everyone, so the video today is to talk about lifting a four-wheel drive truck that you're going to use for towing. Now, if you're just going to put a mild lift on a 3/4 ton or 1 ton truck or even a 1/2 ton truck, it shouldn't affect your ability to tow that much. What will affect your ability to tow more than anything on a smaller lift like that is going to be your taller tires. The sidewall on your tire is going to flex regardless of what size tire you have. To what extent that sidewall flexes is going to be different based on different types of tires, as well as the tread blocks themselves. If you go to a mud tire like a Nito Trail Grappler that has very tall, thick blocks for tread, then those tread blocks will actually sway slightly or bend. The sidewall of the tire, if you go to a 35-inch tire or taller, the sidewall of that tire is actually going to flex and bend. So even though you might have a mild lift kit on a truck, if you plan on towing with it, that additional weight over the back causes the sidewall of your tire to flex side to side, and it can give you a tire-induced sway, which is the feeling of sway, but it's not necessarily a traditional sway. It's that back and forth, side to side movement that you get from tires that are flexing. Now, if you plan on going with a taller lift kit, say something between a 4 and a 6-inch lift kit on a truck, there are other things to keep in mind. First of all, if you're going to do, let's say, a 4-inch lift kit or a 6-inch lift kit, you're probably going to have a system that either uses lift blocks in the back, leaf springs, or a combination of both to lift the back. In some cases, they replace your entire rear leaf spring assembly. In some cases, they augment your factory leaf springs by adding either 1 or 2 additional leaf springs to achieve a taller lift. And in some cases, they do that plus add a taller block in the back. Now, the problem with kits that completely replace your leaf spring is that the leaf springs that they install are generally not rated to the same capacity as your factory leaf springs. They have a much greater taper to them, they have a much deeper bend, and they're far more progressive rated. They're not designed to be a stiff spring, they're designed to be a more comfortable and movement-oriented spring, since that truck may be used in off-road purposes and you don't necessarily want the stiffest leaf springs when you're trying to articulate your tires and axles over different terrain. So that being the case, many times your higher-end kits may include a full leaf spring replacement pack. And you do want to keep in mind that by replacing your entire leaf spring assembly, that if you plan on hauling a fifth wheel or a travel trailer behind your truck, it can really put more strain on your back suspension, given the fact that the aftermarket leaf springs aren't necessarily designed to have the same type of payload capacity as your factory springs. That's why you see a lot of these lifted trucks, when they put a fifth wheel or a travel trailer behind them, they sag considerably in the back, because the leaf springs that they replaced simply aren't up to the job of the factory leaf springs. Now, all that being said, the best setup, in my opinion, for lifting the rear end of a truck is generally a combination of a slightly taller block than the factory block. So if you have a 2-inch block, maybe going to a 4-inch block, and then the use of additional add-a-leaf springs. Typically, you'll see an add-a-leaf spring set up with your Pro Comp kits, some of the lower-end BDS kits, and some other kits that are on the market. And the reason why is because it's a less expensive route to go than to replace your entire leaf spring setup. However, the reason why it's less expensive is because it's less material, but you're not replacing the entire assembly, and these kits generally aren't designed for extreme rugged off-road use anyways. They're designed for cosmetically lifting your truck. So by adding leaves to your rear leaf spring kit, it can actually tighten up your suspension, not changing the factory specs of your truck and not increasing it from a legal payload capacity or towing perspective. From a physics perspective, it's going to give you the additional capacity of whatever those leaf springs are rated at, plus your factory leaf springs. The lift blocks themselves just raise the back of the truck, and they really add nothing to the suspension. But keep in mind that when you add height to your vehicle, you are changing the geometry of not just the drive shaft, but how it connects to the axle. And there are problems that can be introduced by lifting a vehicle, especially if you're going to use it for towing. You have a far higher likelihood of what's called axle wrap if you're going to be towing with a lifted vehicle. And that's essentially where the drive shaft of the vehicle is spinning at such high torque that it's causing the rear axle to roll back on the spring. There are ways to address that, and it generally involves welding or frame mounting a traction bar to the frame of your vehicle and then attaching it to the axle to prevent the axle from rolling back or wrapping. Something else you want to keep an eye on, if you plan on lifting a short wheelbase pickup truck or one without a long bed, again, when you're towing a travel trailer, you're not going to have as much sway control inherently in a shorter wheelbase truck. If you lift that truck, it's going to make that problem worse, because not only are you going to have virtual sway created by the tire sidewall flexing, but you're also going to have the truck sway itself. And the increased height to the back can just exacerbate that. You also want to keep in mind that when you lift a truck, it makes it more difficult to hitch up to a fifth wheel and even a travel trailer. Travel trailers give you some flexibility because you can use a drop hitch. And a drop hitch basically just lowers the hitch point so you can level out your trailer. From a fifth wheel perspective, though, you're going to have limitations because the overhang of the fifth wheel is going to have to clear the bed rails of the truck. So at some point, if you go too high, the fifth wheel you have is going to want to pitch up in the front. Now, it may not seem like that's such a bad thing, but if you think about it, what you're actually doing is transferring a significant amount of weight from the tongue of the truck to the actual rear axles of the trailer and the tires. So you end up putting a significantly higher load on the tires of your trailer, specifically the back tires, if you have dual axles. Also, the weight distribution that generally you're looking for with a fifth wheel, which is about 15 to 20% over the back of the truck, is going to be thrown off significantly, and you're going to have more like 10% over the back of the truck with it pitched up. This can cause for a very dangerous situation, and it can actually lead to sway where normally you wouldn't have any with a fifth wheel setup, because the trailer itself might want to start wandering side to side, and that can actually make the truck feel very unstable. Now, a lot of these problems aren't as severe if you're towing with a travel trailer with a lifted truck. Naturally, a travel trailer is going to want to induce sway on a truck far more than a fifth wheel. However, with a lifted truck, as long as you have a drop hitch and you're properly weight distributed, you generally aren't going to have too many problems. But keep in mind that, again, a travel trailer is going to want to induce sway on virtually any type of pickup truck, even a dually. A longer wheelbase is going to help control that. Dual rear wheels will help control that. But you're still going to have some degree of sway when semi-trucks pass by you in high crosswinds on certain types of road conditions. And with a lifted truck, that addition of the sidewall flex of your tire is going to make it feel even worse. So you want to keep that in mind. Your best bet is just simply not to lift a truck you really plan on towing with. If you do it in a responsible way, do a very mild lift. I would suggest going anything higher than 2 or 3 inches total, and just keep in mind what your limitations are. Don't try to have the cosmetics of a lift if it's going to endanger you, other people around you, or your family. In regards to the differences in lift kits from a quality perspective, the reality is, unless you're going to be using your truck for serious off-roading, almost any kit, regardless of the price point, as long as it's from a reputable brand and they give you a lifetime warranty, they're really going to hold up. There's not a lot that can break on these kits. In most cases, the parts that they're going to have you add are going to be far more robust than even the factory parts that are on your vehicle. The one variable to that are your shocks. Shocks are definitely going to have a different feel based on different designs. You know, your Fox 2.0 performance shocks are going to give you a much more firm feel, firm ride, and in some cases that might actually make the vehicle feel rougher when you're going over terrain. There are adjustable shock options like your Rancho 9000s, and even ProComp makes a few with the MX line, but the reality of it is typically any of your well-known brand names, their midline shocks are going to work fine for you. Most of the time, the life expectancy of any of these shocks are going to be generally about 60,000 miles before you're going to want to either service them or replace them. The nice thing about Fox shocks is you pay a lot. It is a firmer ride, but they are fully serviceable and can be rebuilt. Most of your other monotube shocks are going to require replacement, but most of them are also going to come with a lifetime warranty. So even if it does wear out, the manufacturers are generally more than happy to ship you a whole new set of shocks out to replace the worn out shocks. Now, if you plan on doing hardcore off-roading, I wouldn't use that truck to tow with. because the suspension rate, the way you want the shocks to handle, the travel distance of your suspension are all going to be different than the kits that you typically buy at your local truck upfitter or your four-wheel drive shop. That being said, if you plan on doing some serious off-roading, your best bet is to go with a very high-end kit, or to even have a kit customized specifically for your vehicle. And that oftentimes means you're going to go with parts from different brands or different manufacturers to get the very best. You may want a Fox Reservoir shock or a King shock or a Dirt Logic shock, whereas you may want part of your suspension kit to be BDS, part of it to be custom made. You're going to want traction bars and all sorts of other components to really improve the durability and the comfort of using a high-end kit off-road. And that's really not what this video is about. This video is about understanding how lifting a truck can change your towing dynamics and understanding what that means for you. I really hope this video is informative. I know there's a lot of hardcore four-wheeler junkies out there that can criticize and critique everything I stated. I hope I was pretty on par with their frame of mind when it comes to this topic. If you like this video, I'd really appreciate it if you gave it a thumbs up and if you subscribe to my channel. Have a great day, everyone.